A woman tried to publicly shame Caroline Leavitt, expecting the crowd to take her side. But reality had other plans, plans that hit her harder than she ever anticipated. Caroline wasn't looking for drama that day. She had a list, a plan, and less than 30 minutes before her next appointment. The Knoxville, Tennessee shopping center was bustling, mothers wrangling toddlers, teens hanging around the food court, employees on their lunch breaks. She moved quickly through the aisles of a mid-size grocery store, picking up just the basics: milk, bread, a few vegetables. It was a normal day, until it wasn't. As she rounded the corner into the frozen food section, she heard a voice, sharp, cutting, and filled with anger. "Unbelievable! People like you think they can just walk around like normal citizens." The words were loud enough to turn heads. Caroline barely reacted at first. She assumed it was directed at someone else, but then, "Yeah, I'm talking to you." She stopped. A woman stood 10 feet away, gripping her shopping cart so tightly her knuckles were white. Mid-40s, blonde hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing a loose t-shirt with a political slogan stretched across her chest. Her eyes locked onto Caroline, filled with something more than just anger. This wasn't random. This was personal. Caroline exhaled slowly. She had dealt with hostility before. Politics came with its fair share of confrontations. Heated debates, ruthless interviews, online arguments. She was no stranger to pushback. But this was different. People started noticing. A woman near the yogurt aisle froze, mid-reach. A couple near the registers whispered to each other, glancing over. The tension in the store thickened like a storm cloud rolling in. "What's the problem?" Caroline finally asked, keeping her voice steady. The woman scoffed, loud enough for half the store to hear. "You are the problem," she snapped. "People like you spread lies and get away with it. You disgust me." Caroline didn't flinch. She didn't take the bait. Instead, she studied the woman, her hands trembling, her breathing uneven. This wasn't just about politics. This woman was furious about something deeper. "Listen," Caroline said, keeping her tone calm. "I don't know what's upsetting you, but—" "Oh, don't pretend," the woman cut her off, stepping forward. "You and your kind are dangerous. You have no idea what people like me have been through because of you." More heads turned. A man near checkout reached for his phone, holding it low but definitely recording. A cashier stopped mid-scan, her eyes flicking up, waiting to see if this would go viral. Caroline held her ground. She had been through brutal interviews, smear campaigns, staged ambushes, but this was raw, unfiltered. It wasn't a journalist looking for a headline. It was just a woman boiling over with rage, and all eyes were on her now. The air in the store had changed. People weren't just shopping anymore, they were watching. Some stood frozen, carts abandoned in the aisles. Others pretended to scroll through their phones but were clearly recording. A couple near the dairy section whispered, exchanging that look, the one people give when they sense something about to explode. Caroline felt it all. The woman took another step forward. "People like you are ruining this country," she spat, her voice rising. "You act so righteous, but you're nothing but a fraud. A danger to democracy." Caroline's heartbeat remained steady, but her mind raced. This woman wanted a reaction. She wanted Caroline to snap back, to escalate the scene. That wasn't going to happen. "I understand that you're upset," Caroline said, her voice controlled. "But I'm just here to buy groceries, like everyone else." That only made her angrier. "You don't get to act like this is normal." The woman's voice cut through the store. A mother near the bakery pulled her child closer. A store employee, barely out of his teens, stood stiff behind the self-checkout, eyeing the registers as if debating whether to call security. The woman's hands trembled as she pointed a finger. "You don't get to pretend you're just a regular person after everything you've done." A sharp silence followed. Caroline felt the shift. The tension wasn't just between her and this woman anymore. It had spread. People weren't just watching. They were feeling the weight of it too. Some nodded, agreeing with the woman's anger. Others looked uncomfortable, as if realizing they had stepped into something much bigger than a quick grocery run. And then, the woman lunged forward. Not a full attack, but close. Her hands didn't make contact, but they came too close. Too aggressive. Gasps rippled through the store. A man near the floral section wearing a crisp blue button-up stepped forward like he was ready to intervene. A woman behind Caroline muttered, "Oh, this is bad." Someone's phone definitely caught that moment. Caroline still didn't move. She could have stepped back, raised her hands, given the crowd a reaction. But she didn't. Instead, she locked eyes with the woman. "I'm not afraid of you." Her voice was steady. For a moment, the woman's face twisted. She looked like she might lose control completely. Her breath hitched, shoulders shaking, fists clenched at her sides. Then, just as quickly, doubt flickered in her eyes. She expected a fight, expected yelling, expected Caroline to break. Instead, she stood there, calm as ever. A man near the register finally spoke up. "This ain't the place for this, lady." The woman's head snapped toward him. "Stay out of this," she barked, her face flushing red. But the energy had shifted. People weren't just watching anymore. They were reacting. A woman near the fruit aisle whispered to her husband, "This is insane? She's just shopping." A young man in his 20s, his t-shirt making it clear he wasn't a fan of Caroline's politics, shook his head. "This is too much." The entire store was taking sides, and no one expected what happened next. The store wasn't just a shopping center anymore. It had become a stage. Every aisle, every checkout line, every person frozen in place. The woman, still seething, looked like she was seconds away from snapping. But Caroline? She remained still, not passive, not intimidated, just in control. "I get it," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You don't like me. You don't like what I stand for. But you're not going to intimidate me." The woman let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, please," she scoffed, shaking her head. "You think you're the victim here? After all the harm you and your kind have caused?" Her voice cracked. It wasn't just anger anymore. There was something beneath it. And Caroline saw it. This woman wasn't just mad at her. She was hurting. A clash in the aisles, when an unexpected confrontation took a turn. Caroline Leavitt wasn't expecting anything unusual that day. She had a plan, a schedule, and just under 30 minutes before her next appointment. Her grocery list was simple: milk, bread, vegetables, just the essentials for a busy week. The Knoxville shopping center was bustling with life. Mothers wrangled toddlers as they darted between aisles, teenagers lounged near the food court, and employees on break hurried to grab quick lunches. It was the kind of everyday chaos that made a place feel alive. Caroline navigated the store efficiently, moving past shelves stacked high with cereal boxes and refrigerated sections stocked with colorful produce. It was supposed to be an ordinary errand, but nothing about the next 10 minutes would be ordinary. As she rounded a corner into the frozen food section, a sharp voice cut through the ambient noise of the store. "Unbelievable! People like you think they can just walk around like normal citizens?" The words were loud, filled with disdain, and they turned heads. Caroline barely reacted at first, assuming the outburst was directed at someone else. Then, "Yeah, I'm talking to you." She stopped. Standing 10 feet away was a woman, gripping her shopping cart so tightly her knuckles had gone white. She looked to be in her mid-40s, her blonde hair pulled into a messy bun. The oversized t-shirt she wore bore a progressive slogan stretched across her chest. But it was her eyes, narrowed, unblinking, locked onto Caroline, that made it clear. This wasn't just a random outburst. This was personal. Caroline inhaled slowly. Political life had exposed her to hostility before. Debates, interviews, online attacks. She was no stranger to heated exchanges. But this was different. This was raw. This was real. The store began to change. A woman near the yogurt section paused, mid-reach. A couple at the registers whispered, exchanging nervous glances. The tension was thick, palpable. Caroline finally spoke, her voice even, measured. "What's the problem?" The woman scoffed. Loudly. "You are the problem," she snapped. "People like you spreading your garbage, thinking you can get away with it. You disgust me." Caroline didn't flinch. Reacting with anger would escalate the situation, and she knew it. But she noticed something beyond just political outrage. The woman's hands were trembling. Her breathing was fast, erratic. This wasn't just about politics. This was about something deeper. Caroline kept her voice calm. "Listen, I don't know what's upsetting you, but—" "Oh, don't pretend." The woman cut her off, stepping forward, shrinking the space between them. "You and your kind, you're dangerous. You have no idea what people like me have been through because of you." More people turned to watch. A man near the checkout subtly lifted his phone, recording. A cashier paused mid-scan, her fingers hovering over the register's keys. Caroline's mind worked quickly. Was this going to go viral? Was this woman going to lash out physically? Would security step in before things escalated further? One thing was clear. All eyes were on her now. The energy in the store had shifted. It was no longer just a store. It had become a stage. Every aisle, every register, every person in the building was now a spectator. The woman took another step forward. "People like you are ruining this country," she spat, her voice rising. "You act like you're so righteous, but you're nothing but a fraud." Caroline remained steady, her heartbeat controlled. She could tell what the woman wanted. A reaction. She wanted Caroline to snap back, to ignite the flames of conflict. That wasn't going to happen. "I understand that you're upset," Caroline said, voice measured. "But I'm just here to buy groceries like everyone else." That only made the woman angrier. "You don't get to act like this is normal," she shrieked. A mother near the bakery instinctively pulled her child closer. A young store employee at self-checkout stiffened, eyes darting toward the registers as if deciding whether to call for help. Then the woman pointed a trembling finger at Caroline. "You don't get to pretend you're just some regular person after everything you've done." A sharp silence followed. Caroline felt it, the way the energy had changed, how the tension had expanded beyond just the two of them. This was no longer a personal conflict. The entire store was now part of it. Some customers nodded, subtly agreeing with the woman's anger. Others looked uneasy as though realizing they had wandered into something far bigger than their grocery lists. Then, the woman lunged. Not a full attack, but close. Her hands didn't quite make contact, but they came too close, too aggressive. Gasps rippled through the store. A man near the floral section, wearing a crisp button-up, stepped forward like he was ready to intervene. Someone behind Caroline muttered, "Oh, this is bad." And at least one phone caught that moment on camera. But Caroline? She didn't move. She didn't shrink back, didn't raise her hands in defense. She simply stood her ground and locked eyes with the woman. "I'm not afraid of you." Her voice was steady, unshaken. For the first time since this confrontation began, something shifted in the woman's face. Her breath hitched, her shoulders quivered, her fists clenched, then loosened. Doubt flickered in her eyes. She had expected a fight. She had expected yelling, shouting, chaos. She had expected Caroline to break. Instead, she found someone who refused to meet her rage with rage. Then a voice cut through the air. "This ain't the place for this, lady." A man, mid-50s, gray hair, arms crossed, spoke from the register area. The woman's head snapped toward him. "Stay out of this," she barked. But something was changing. People weren't just watching anymore. They were reacting. A young woman near the fruit aisle whispered to her husband, "This is insane. She's just shopping." A guy in his 20s, wearing a t-shirt that made it very clear he wasn't a fan of Caroline's politics, shook his head and muttered, "This is too much." The crowd wasn't siding with her anymore, and no one expected what happened next. The turning point. The store was no longer just a shopping center. It had become something else entirely. The woman's confidence wavered. She glanced around, suddenly aware that the crowd that had initially seemed like her audience was now uncertain. Then another voice. "That's enough." It wasn't security. It wasn't an employee. It was just a customer. A man in his late 40s standing near the checkout lines, arms crossed, dressed in casual clothes, faded jeans, a plain t-shirt, scuffed sneakers. But his presence was solid. "I was just trying to check out and leave," he said. "But now I gotta stand here and watch you scream at a woman buying groceries? Yeah, I'd say that makes it my business." The woman's lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to fire back. But she was losing the room. And then, just like that, security arrived. "Ma'am, we need to ask you to leave." The woman's face twisted. "I'm the one being removed," she shrieked. But no one was standing with her anymore. Not even the guy who had been recording. And just like that, it was over. But what happened next would surprise even Caroline.